Hey, we're back to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking. I'm your host, Susy Botello, and this is episode 153. Hey, so glad to be back with our Fade into Film panelists, Jason and E.T., Ryan, Joey. They're all here for this round. And we're going to talk about some really cool, interesting topics and have some great conversations. It'll definitely, as always, also be entertaining. And we're going to do that topics introduction in a little bit here. But first, I have a question to ask you. Are you getting something out of this? Are you enjoying our podcast? If so, I don't do this enough. I always seem to forget to bring this up. I'm going to try and remember this a little more often because it's truly and greatly appreciated when you actually, respond to this. And basically, here it is. I'm really horrible at this, but if you're getting something out of this, you're enjoying this, and you want to show some appreciation, maybe give a little back for it, you'll notice there are no ads in this podcast or anything like that. I'd like to keep it running this way. I like being able to, listen myself to a podcast and not be interrupted with ads and things like that. And I'd like to keep mine that way as well. So if you look down in the notes and you'll see a link there, buymeacoffee.com/Susy Botello or patreon.com/SBP podcast. You can give back. You can, bring a bigger smile to my face and help me paying the bills. And that's, it would be greatly appreciated. There is a cost to this podcast. There is a cost with time. There is a cost to host the podcast. And by hosting, I'm not talking about what I'm doing here in the podcast. I'm talking about hosting the podcast files itself onto a server. That's a service that costs money. Anyways, no need for you to know all the details of that. I just wanted to bring that up with you. And all right, we've got some great topics to discuss here. So let's go ahead and head on over to our awesome panelists.
We are Fade into Film.
I'm Susy Botello, and I'm the host of the SBP Podcast and founder of the International Mobile Film Festival by S. Botello Productions. And I'm in San Diego, California.
Hi, my name is Ryan McDonald. I'm a writer, director, producer, actor for feature films and short films, and I am out of Ogden, Utah.
Hi, I'm Levi Austin Morris, and I'm an actor, writer, director, and filmmaker in Los Angeles, California.
I'm Erica E.T. Taylor, and I'm a visual storyteller, video producer, and mobile filmmaker from Houston, Texas.
Hey, I'm Joey Min. I am the creative head for Art School Dropouts, a YouTuber, but also a filmmaker, and we are located in New Jersey.
I'm Jason Rivera, a music composer based out of Los Angeles, California.
Hey, everybody, we're here. We're back. Fade into Film. We've got Jason in the house. Woohoo, Jason.
Hey.
We got Erica is here. E.T.
Hey, I'm back again.
We got Joey.
Hey, what's up, everybody? What's going on?
And Ryan.
Hey, everybody, how's it going?
Hey, we've got some topics that we wanted to discuss. Hopefully you've listened to our previous episode, but if you haven't, that's all right, because we've got some new things to talk about, and we're also going to touch back on some subjects that are still being talked about out there in the universe where we live outside of this podcast, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Definitely.
All right. So I wanted to, instead of going down the line like we did the last time, I figured that, does anyone have some news that they want to share with our listeners?
Like during, I believe in November, I have to get the dates correct on this, but HBO US, like they in oh my gosh, I forgot what movie theater it is. It's in Times Square, but apparently during the film festival for HBO's Urban Action Film Festival, they have asked the dropouts to, like, we have like this 2-hour block of playing some of our like short films there, and so they wanted us to come back for like this year to do that. So that's one thing. If you guys are in New York around November 11th, I believe, like, you guys, the film festival, if you guys want to just pop into the I forgot what
really
movie theater.
cool.
I'm so bad at this. I know, like,
Congrats.
Steph would like kill me, but yeah.
No, this is cool. I got some friends actually that are in New York.
Oh, sweet.
That are mobile filmmakers and actors and stuff that we'll have to invite them over to catch it for us. That's really cool. That's quite an honor, huh?
Yeah, no, it's very awesome. Like, apparently just heard about it from Steph like last week, and I don't remember the details, and I'm sure she'll be mad at me for not remembering the details here, so.
Well,
awesome,
if
Joey.
you guys,
Oh, thank you.
you guys have a newsletter, right?
We do. I'm, cause like Steph is the business person. I'm literally the creative, like, right. So, and that's why we work well together. I'm not sure about all of those things, and that's really sad for me to say.
But I know, no, it's pathetic, Joey. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's.
I think
it's
that's
good.
being a creative. I feel like, yeah, definitely the whole marketing part is a different mindset. So yeah,
But there's so much creativity in marketing.
Oh, there
too.
is definitely, and that's what Steph's really good at. I'm
Yeah.
good at the other things.
You're good at the fighting and the directing and the. Oh, that's awesome. Well, we'll have to add a link to your newsletter in our notes. So pass that on.
Okay, thank you so much.
So that we can add it for our listeners who, because I'm sure she's, Stephanie. Yo.
Yeah, no, she listens. I know.
Yeah.
Hi, Steph.
So
I'm sorry, I
she'll send.
forgot.
Yeah. So we'll send people your way. Anybody else got anything?
I think I'm in between right now. So I guess on one hand, it is in my class, finals week is next week. So that is fortunately for my class, it's project based. So I just gotta wait until those start to come in. And I pitched to a potential client today. And so I just have to, now I'm on the waiting end. And so I hope to know something, I hope to get some positive news. Next 7 days, within 7 days. So by the next recording, I should have some updates on that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And so we'll be rooting for you.
Yes.
So let's get this show on the road here. Let's talk about something. Now, before we go too deep into what we can't stop talking about, which is AI, I wanted to chat with everybody about something. Here's a couple of topics I thought we should discuss. One of them is why actors should make mobile films. Maybe even now might be an even better time than ever, considering all that's going on in the industry. I also want to talk about what is indie film and what is it not. We were starting to debate that before we got rolling on the show. And Hollywood using AI, like de-aging celebrity actors? Does that open doors to indie film and smartphone film people? And, we'll probably touch on that a little bit here as well. So those are some of our main topics, and we never know where things may lead. So let's start with indie film. What does indie film mean to you guys? Anyone want to talk about that?
Well, I guess it's indie film is anything that isn't isn't outside a major studio type of feel, right? But I guess that's also kind of an iffy thing too, to say what exactly is like non-Hollywood studio. I mean, I know I'm saying it in a very Western way, because obviously there's other like major filmmaking scenarios in other countries, but yeah.
Right. And so I think that what's happened too is that the industry has grown so much. I mean, we're talking about making movies with a phone now, right? So it's grown so much in so many different ways that what indie film has been at the time when it first started, I mean, really, there were like almost just one major studio that owned everything and everyone that participated in the industry. And then more came along, and but this industry has grown, and so the lines have sort of crossed over. It's kind of like that thing with the circles, and then they kind of unite, and there's a circle in the middle of sort of, well, maybe you're indie and maybe people don't consider you indie. I think I was talking about the $30 million independent film or something like that, where it gets, kind of iffy. It's like, oh, I didn't know that was an independent film because, Tom Cruise and, God knows who was in it, So, and then I always like to bring back Brokeback Mountain, which was an indie film, but then it was picked up by, who was it that picked it up? I forgot the name of the distribution company that brought it into all the mainstream theaters.
Was it Focus?
I think so. I forgot the name of that. I remember Magnolia Pictures picking up, Tangerine from Sean Baker. Like, if I don't remember that, I'm in trouble, right? But I forgot who brought in that one. But that was an example for me, because, Heath Ledger, one of my favorite actors in the whole world, was in it. And I think it probably added to the attraction of that film as well. But people watched it in little theaters, in different towns. The lines were lined up around the block, and some of the bigger studios said, the theaters said, well, we want that clientele. And it just kind of picked up from there. So
wait, Brokeback Mountain was actually indie?
Yeah, at first when they started out. Yeah.
Because isn't that during the time when I guess when the Hong Kong handover was happening, so a lot of the Hong Kong filmmakers kind of moved over to America? Because wasn't that like Ang Lee did that, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, it was his follow-up to the Hulk movie that he did.
Right. I didn't know that was indie. I thought it was. Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I thought that the Hong Kong filmmakers were that was the hot thing to do, to get one of those filmmakers that are that moved away from Hong Kong to be a filmmaker or continue their filmmaking thing here in America or something. I didn't think that was an indie film. That's pretty interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So okay. So how would you Ryan, how do you define an indie film? Because you're all over this too.
Yeah, that is a hard question, because there's a time where indie film could assume that it's anything outside of the big six studios. But then, at our level, I made a movie for $6,000, and that's quite a bit different than a movie where, say, you have executive producer Brad Pitt and he's able to invest, as we were just saying a second ago, maybe $20 million, even though the movie's still outside of the studio system, but it's like $20 million though, right? They have quite a bit.
Awesome.
Quite a bit of.
Well, you made a feature film for $6,000.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah. My feature film, Married and
awesome.
Loving It. Yeah. It was around 6,000. I think, in the end of the day, I probably spent about 1,500 on festival submissions overall. But then all the actors were day rated. Then luckily with the crew, it's like my friends, and they're really like my closest friends, and so we work on each other's films for free. So I was able to. That's how I was
and
able.
you shot it on an iPhone.
And we shot it on an iPhone 6. Yeah.
That's awesome. Nice. Is it online somewhere?
Yes, on Amazon Prime.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome.
See?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Self-distribute, baby.
Yeah.
It is something. I mean, I was telling you guys the feature film that I worked on that didn't really go anywhere. That film had $1 million budget, and that was a totally independent film. Just imagine that, though.
Right. You said 10 million?
No, $1 million.
I mean, well, I've seen.
It's still a low budget film. It's still considered a low budget film. That's why it's such a big range when you hear $1 million to make a movie.
Yeah.
When Ryan, you made a movie for $6,000, and it's on Amazon Prime right now, right? So when you think about that, it's just mind blowing that $1 million to make a film that ended up not really succeeding, right? It was on DVD at Amazon, and you can't find it anymore. It wasn't, it's like, are you kidding me? And then you have a $30 or $20 million movie, and it's still considered independent. I think that's what's mind-boggling about the whole thing.
Yeah. I guess, isn't that basically, I guess the history of Hollywood, or, just the American cinema, right? Like, it's basically run by like a gang, right? Like a crime syndicate for like in the basically the Wild West of filmmaking back then, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's I consider, like, at the level that I made the movie, I like to use the term like micro budget, because it's not just indie, it's 0 to no budget or micro budget.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is you just opened up another door there. It's like there's a door within the door, which is, based on budget 100%. On the flip side, you don't have Hollywood studios making $6,000 films. They could probably, right?
Well,
they make enough
cool,
money.
I think, if like Hollywood studios would actually give chances to smaller filmmakers and give them sub $10,000 budgets, right?
I worked on a short film that was Lionsgate. I think they provided because it was shot on actual film, and they backed that film, and it was a short film. So they do things like that because they want to be nice, I think. But I think you're right. I think it would be really cool. I don't see it happening, considering the big fight that's happening right now. What do you think, Jason?
I was going to say, I think maybe indie film is also a stylistic approach in terms of, like, I think about it in the music industry. There's big record labels like Universal, for example, and they have, they're huge artists that make them a lot of money, but then they have these subsidiary companies within their label where smaller artists that are quote unquote indie artists, bands or whatever, they make music I think that takes more chances, and they make music maybe that's not really aimed at, you know, a mass wide audience, or, you know, have a mass appeal, but it's music that they want to make. So I wonder if maybe some of that is kind of at play, in the sense that I think indie filmmakers, they're telling the stories that they want to tell without really caring about, you know, the fact that they're not on a, you know, connected to a huge studio or anything like that. So it makes me feel like maybe there's also, because as we've discussed, money is not always an indicator, like a clear cut and dry, like, you know, if you pass this amount in your budget, then you're no longer indie. That's not really the case per se. So it makes me feel like, well, maybe it's more about the person or the people making the film and their intentions and their approach to storytelling. That seems like it would be a factor at play as well.
And then my question that comes up with that is, so are indie filmmakers considered filmmakers who shouldn't be looking to profit on their films?
Ooh, I feel like, I mean,
I think it shouldn't be the main focus. It would
yeah,
be
it
nice.
Shouldn't be the main, but it would be a really good bonus.
Yeah. Like,
right?
It would really work, but like I knew with my film that it wasn't going to be like commercially accepted just by the material. And I was fine with that, because it was like the art was more important than the commerce, I guess. Was my feeling.
Yeah. Because I think I used to say this too. Like, I wish that seeing that there are creators out there that would make, I guess, what you would call like viral or clickbaity type of content, quote unquote, right? But to be a creator, that's your main goal, and that's what fills you artistically, all the while fitting the market of what you really want to make, must be so fulfilling, you know? Like, you make something that everybody actually wants, you know. And that's actually probably like the main dream of any creator, I think.
I think that's actually part of the struggle with what is happening right now with the strikes and everything, that you have the executives that are at that crossroads between, you know, we want to make a bunch of money, and they have the, you know, we were talking last time about the formula, right, for making that much money. And the formula eats at the story making part, the creativity part. Like when you watch movies now, right, you know, you see the formula laid out in front of you. Where an independent film, you know, you can take the risk of not having that formula and literally engage your viewers in a way that goes beyond what Hollywood can do. And people may start to appreciate that in a way that you may make some serious profit from it.
Yeah, I mean,
or what if, and I didn't think of this until we were having this conversation, but what if indie, in a new definition, indie film, was where the artist or the artists who are all involved are in full control of the overall product. You know, like what if in the same way, like in the Zack Snyder like Justice League cut, like what if, I know that had a, you know, obviously $1 million backing by HBO, but at the end of the day, it's like it's the product that he wanted. Or like James Cameron's, you know, even Titanic, which had, you know, an absurd amount of money put towards it, but at the end of the day, it's like it's his final product. Or what we see now with Oppenheimer, you know, we know that Christopher Nolan, that's his final product.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question though, right? Because like a lot of the bigger films are really driven because of studio money, right? And they have a definitely say on it to be able to, like, they have their analytics and ideas of what would sell. So yeah, it makes sense.
So this kind of brings me, Ryan, into this whole thing. Now, when you make your films, you also act. and this also, I want to get your perspective on this, on would it be a good idea if more actors made now, right? Especially now, while they're, at a standstill. Maybe Jason, you can speak to this too. Maybe you guys know, but if an actor right now is on strike, right, and they're not allowed to work for these studios, and they have some of them are getting waivers to work for independent filmmakers. What if it's them? It's their own film shot with a smartphone or something. How would that work? Do you guys know?
That's a great question. I am not a union worker, so I don't know the rules. And thus I don't know how to break those rules or to bend them either. So that's hard for me to say what that line looks like.
I think also this might not be the answer that you're looking for, Susy, but with some writers that I know, I think they're fatigued from all the picketing. They've been picketing since May, and like discussions that I've had with a couple of them, they kind of ebb and flow in terms of their just creative energy levels, because some of them are literally out picketing every day or almost every day and have been since May. So it's really hard to say.
Yeah, because I think it's eating at their budget as well. The reason why I was bringing up more on the actors is because I know actors need to get their faces out there, or people will forget about them. Basically, that's kind of like their thing. It's like I'll work on little films in between the big films because I don't want to be forgotten. It's an industry that forgets about them very quickly. They go in and out of fame,
Yeah.
Okay, so forget that because no one knows, which is fine. It's something maybe one of our listeners, will know the answer to this. I don't want to make things too complicated. It's not like it's a test of our knowledge. But let's talk a little bit about this topic that we keep talking about anyways. When it comes to, we've talked about what is indie film. We know that gets, complicated, right? It's not a straight answer because of the budget for the most part. And let's talk now about AI. Dun, 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 dun. I was watching the Terminator movie, the one where all the timelines get crossed. And they
be more
had
specific
this,
on that.
I know. I don't remember the freaking name.
The last three movies. Yeah.
They all get crossed. It's when they go back to 1980. They begin with the AI, scene.
That's
with
every movie. That's every Terminator.
who was Michael Biehn? What was his name? I already forgot
Kyle.
his name in the.
Kyle Reese.
Okay, he's a young boy and he's picked up by John Connor. I can't forget that name. And he's rescued by him, and they kind of, once he grows up, he gets sent back to 1984 to find Mom again. But just as he gets sent back, something happens. Oh my God, what's the name of that one? Anyways, so what happened was, hold on, I'm about to find it here. Terminator Salvation. I think that's it. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't think I pronounced his name right. They show two versions of him. They show an older version and they show the young version, the original version, and he was done like AI. And that made me think about Gemini Man with Will Smith and how they used AI. in the film as well, but to make him look younger, and they did such a good job at that. And so my question with AI, because that's part of what people are complaining about, right? That they're going to scan them and use them for whatever roles. Like if you're an extra, you're working on the film scene, right? You're an extra, but you hope to get cast in something eventually. You're not just always wanting to be an extra. But if you don't even get to be on set anymore after that, then how do you progress from that? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing like if you're working on a film in post-production, if you're working for during the post part of it, and you're sort of doing all the monotonous work for the editor. If the editor uses an AI, then how do you come into that field, sort of like an apprentice or something, to learn how to do this process so that you can advance to being an editor? Same thing on the set. And I'm just looking for how, because we were talking about this, we were kind of arguing about this a little bit about, yeah, AI will do away with a lot of the processes that are monotonous and could free up the editor per se, but we forget that below the editor, there's a whole team of people that are doing these processes, and the experience, which maybe I'll put that on a t-shirt, guys, the experience that makes the expert through experience will be erased. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I guess the question is like, in terms of automation, what is if an editor, if your job is easily automated by an editor, like who's actually doing that job? I'm guessing, because I would assume that's what part of the job.
So the editors have assistant editors.
Well,
right?
that's true.
And
right?
media managers.
I
right?
guess I suppose, right? But then,
yeah.
But wouldn't, and I guess the argument would be like, if your job is easily automated, wouldn't that already raise like the skill set of people that would have to be like the, assistant editors? Like, I don't know if actually, I think I understand what you're saying, but at the same time,
like if you're not working, we're talking about film mainly, right? So this is not an industry that's, we're not talking about, landscaping or something. This is a very secluded kind of industry, sought after industry, very hard to get into. And part of the process of you advancing within the industry is by being a part of it, right? And in order to know the process, right, you need the experience within the industry to even be considered for a position and to be trusted to be an editor per se. So if you're working with an editor by assisting the editor, right, this is just one position to give an example for, then how are you, the editor's like, yeah, I need these. And then you're working closely with the editor, and and human to human interaction is going to, that editor is going to be teaching you things and explaining things of why I need this and why this fits here and why I need you to do it that way and things like that you're learning from. If that assistant turns into artificial, intelligence, and it's done, through automation, that conversation isn't happening, and there's no human there that wants to get into that industry that's going to be there assisting, because the AI is going to take that place. When that editor leaves, right, then you don't have, what I'm trying to say is that you don't have the generations of people working within the industry, not to do the exact same job, but to even make it progressive, to advance in it from human to human, as opposed to from machine to machine, basically.
I see.
And when I say machine, I'm not talking about a robot. I'm talking about the process.
Right. But
Yeah.
I guess it probably, certain jobs, I think, or certain sectors.
Yeah.
Like automation, I mean, the reason why I know I'm a filmmaker now is because of certain automations that have happened through technology for me to be able to, learn how to film digital film, because that became much more accessible to like a lot more people. And obviously, there's a lot of filmmakers out there that isn't trained in a film school. Some of them picked up a camera and just learned it themselves, simply because there have been, automation making things accessible for people, right? And I understand like the editor. I guess one example I have is like if an editor was editing podcast right now, right? And you see that there are, like AI automated, algorithm based editing or cutting, like a very base idea of a podcast because of the sound or something like that. Like, I mean, that's like a very meticulous job that someone like, an editor used to do like last year, but now they could finish like a video podcast, within like a few hours instead of taking like a week. Like, but that should be accessible to everybody, right? So wouldn't a new generation of, say, editors learn their own style so they don't have to?
I think it would change the entire human deduction from making decisions that are artistic on that. For example, there are just to use the podcast thing, there are ways that will automate, editing the tracks and stuff, but they churn it in such a way that when you listen to them, right? Like they take out, like there's an automation that'll take out all the ums. I say a lot. They'll take out all the ums, and then it makes it sound sort of not realistic in a way. Mm-hmm. They will take out all the spaces when they're just a little bit too long. And we all know as filmmakers that, you see what I did there? That silence gives you the example of I'm thinking. There's pauses and silences for a reason. And those things automation doesn't do very well.
But shouldn't that just, the automation give a base, like a base for the real editor to actually tweak it, right? It's just, giving these editors more time to be creatively.
So they're fixing what the automation did. So they might as well just do it. That's just an example, but I think podcasts are probably the worst example because nobody pays you to edit a podcast unless you're really good. Nobody pays me to edit this. No, but I think, in the film industry itself, it's very hard to get into, and it probably will always remain that way. But I think it would just make it worse. That's just my opinion on it. What do you think, Ryan? What do you think, Jason? E.T.?
Well, before we got into the editing part, one of the other questions was as far as like an actor, and my opinion is that like if you're an actor who's struggling to get into the industry, and keeping in mind that I'm not in the industry at all, but my feeling is then like you just write, and you need to start writing, directing, and casting yourself into a movie. Would be the answer. I'm going to butcher his name. It's so wrong of me. The director of the Mission Impossible movie that just came out, Christopher McQuarrie, I think his name is. I read an interview where he had said that he'd won the Oscar for Usual Suspects for screenwriting, but then he couldn't get a screenwriting job at all. And so that's what led him into directing, was because he was, well, I'll just write and direct my own movies then. And we saw this with Ellen when she had her show through the 90s that got dropped. And so she went back to stand-up, and she said, well, I wrote my own stand-up comedy then. She wrote a whole stand-up hour. So at some point you can't wait for the system to pick you. You're going to have to inject yourself into that system, is my opinion. But I'm also on the very, very outskirts of it all, so it's easy for me to say in that sense. But
yeah, and none of these guys, like the films that they've worked on now and the projects that they work on now, those weren't their first ones. They worked through several to learn to get to where they are now.
Right. So, but wouldn't that also mean that if, you just have to work, even if you have to work for yourself? Like, I mean, that's how you learn, right?
Well, the work is the learning part. See,
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why I love mobile filmmaking, right? Like, I think it's such an accessible way to learn how to be, how to make films that, like, I think every aspect of the production somebody could learn. They know where to put the camera or edit or act. They know they finally get to learn what looks good in front of the camera, where to put everything together, how to make a scene,
Yeah. But there's things within the industry, like you go to an independent film and, I was told on a set, like, shush, don't help the person in the lighting department. Don't help the person in this department because they're working, and I don't mean shush like for reals, but like, if you were working on a film in Hollywood, everybody's union, you're not allowed to step in and help them. You know what I'm saying? There's not that crossover of, hey, we all help each other out to do this. You have to sort of stand on the side and let them do their thing and figure it out on their own, as opposed to with indie filmmaker where everybody's just helping each other out. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so those things, that means that there's a process that you learn in the actual film industry, union, Hollywood filmmaking that's different from indie filmmaking, that you don't have a chance to get in there because they've decided that they're going to have AI do those jobs instead.
I could speak to this from personal experience.
Please do, yeah.
So, many years ago, a couple of separate occasions, from the composer side of things, there are many, especially higher level film composers and TV composers that use assistant composers. And a couple of times I went on job interviews with two different pretty top tier composers. This was years ago. And on one of them, it was like a whole day interview for a top TV composer. And I learned so much from that one day. I've never seen this composer again. We didn't really stay in touch, not for any particular reason, but we just didn't. But I learned so much from him because that interview, about 50% of it was him sitting next to me at his workstation, and we were discussing his process. And then he would have me execute certain tasks in his software, his DAW. And I picked up, I didn't get the job. It's totally fine. Things have worked out just fine for me. But I learned some really important secrets from this guy in terms of how to work with directors and how to work with producers and how to, if a director sends you like a paragraph worth of notes, I learned on that job interview, I learned how to read like a page long email or something and how to interpret those notes from a director and actually pick out what this person actually means in just a few words. How to get...
And they have their own like short notes, basically.
That's what I learned. I learned how to get to the essence of the notes and the feedback on a cue. And I learned that on a job interview. So, I mean, if
shorthand.
I don't think
that's what I meant.
Yeah, shorthand. I don't think that the composer assistant job would ever go away entirely. And I think the flip side of that is that because there are some composers that actually have their assistants write the music cues, and then the main A-list composer slaps their name on it. And there have been certain assistant composers that were so good. They got their start assisting and like just blew their, the person they're working for blew them away. And that's how they got their start, So I think there's probably some big composers that, not that they don't know what they're doing. They definitely know what they're doing, but they rely heavily on their assistant composers to tackle these big films. So I don't know if, the assistant positions, at least in the composing side, would ever disappear completely, but there might be certain tasks, or like just the example that I gave of that one day that I spent and what I learned. If there was software that was making some of those decisions, then, you don't get that baton passing.
You don't have that dialogue. Yeah. You don't have that connection and that conversation. And that is gold in the industry.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you have, so many people volunteer on film productions and film sets. That's why we have interns and things like that for, just about any industry. That's gold, what you learn there in that way. And if we're going to just use AI, over time, those positions are going to be taken over by AI. There won't be a human editor anymore. And I think we'll just leave everything up to AI. And then there's what I brought up the last time was that human ingenuity, because AI is always working off of stuff it's learned and that exists, right? And it won't be able to just make a decision creatively, to innovate even a process in the way that humans do, and what we can connect in our brains, to make those creative decisions that invent things even, is just not something that AI will do. Really, what would the purpose be and again, I'm just talking about the artistic industry, really, and the artistic process, and the result of the content that's created doesn't connect with humans much in the same way that these films through templates are kind of not having the right effect, on us. We can see right through them, and I think it's because, well, partially at least for that reason.
Yeah, I was going to, I know it was mentioned about the human connection being lost due to AI, where I feel when it comes, let's say, video editing, I think some of that human connection, where one editor is, helping a new editor learn, has been lost in today's time, because with platforms like YouTube, any video platform, we can find a bunch of tutorials that someone who has no idea how to edit, with enough studying, you can learn how to get the basics down from just going to YouTube and finding a bunch of things. Whereas maybe several years ago, it wasn't possible. So we needed that interaction, that human interaction, to know how to edit. So I guess the other thing could come in as far as the artistic style, where now, there are platforms or videos out that's breaking down particular artistic styles to where you may not need to be in person with someone to learn how to capture or learn how to edit something in particular. So now I guess where AI comes in is kind of cutting that time, because that person still has to learn. So I guess where AI comes in is now being like, okay, we don't need to take days or months for this person to learn. This AI can kind of already get it. And
I know this may seem really random, but I was just thinking again about these actors that are older, that are made to look younger, to keep regurgitating these films over and over again, like Top Gun, Terminator films, and all these other films that keep happening and taking over because they're such a big success when they first come out, right? So that let's make another one. But the actors age. So now we got AI, making them look younger, and they can still be a part of the film. And I feel like, I don't know how long we're going to keep using, the same big actors with AI, because they get the parts, because it doesn't even matter how old they are or anything like that, how their skill level for doing action or any of that doesn't matter if AI can take their image and recreate it and have them act. It's just about, you're a big name, you're Tom Cruise, you're Brad Pitt, you're, Will Smith, whatever, and we can just keep using you to make money off of the future films. And that means we're just looking at the same actors over and over and over, and the same films over and over and over. Like Avenger and all of those guys. Yeah. So there's not going to be not that many people involved in the industry, right?
And maybe that's expected. Maybe it's expected that the industry is going to maybe trying to do whatever they can to try to use these tools. It's an engine, and it has to keep going. And I guess the beauty of independent filmmaking is we don't have to take that route.
Up to this point, has there been a movie where, to my knowledge, most of the de-aging that we've seen has been purposeful in a sense of the storyline is going into the past, like let's say The Irishman, or even the newest Indiana Jones movie, where it's there's parts of it that are from the 1940s in that storyline compared to the 1970s, whichever. So are we at a point yet where there's the entire movie is now a de-aged Harrison Ford, just for the sake of, because he's 80, but we want him to be like what he was in Sabrina? Are we there yet? Or
didn't Harrison Ford say, "I don't need to be an actor anymore. I'm old anyways, and I don't care to do it"? But they've got him. They can still use him in future films, right?
Yeah, I still think that. He told me not to do this, but I'm gonna say,
the devil.
I just there's still inherently we still see CGI, very very little. Is there a moment in a movie where we're surprised by CGI in a sense? Probably the de-aging on Indiana Jones on this last one was probably the best, but The Irishman, which I love The Irishman. But you can tell that they're just digitally de-aged. You can really see it. And so
Robert Downey Jr., Captain America: Civil War.
Yeah, you can tell. It's like in the in the opening, it's okay, come on. I know that's Downey Jr. from the Only You, U.S. Marshal kind of days, right? So it's are we really tricked by that in a sense? And then you have so is it any different than in Forrest Gump?
It's not a trick. It's kind of the whole thing of filmmaking is a trick. Because there's even a term within filmmaking of cheating things to make it look this way. Because
in Vanilla Sky, I think Tom Cruise is 38 when he made the movie, but the character he plays, he says in the movie he's like, oh, I'm 26, and then in Wolf of Wall Street, DiCaprio is in reality almost 40, but he's playing a 26-year-old character. And then in Forrest Gump, in the earlier parts of Forrest Gump, they actually paint over Tom Hanks's receded hairline so he can play young Forrest in the high school college days.
Yeah.
compared to later in the movie. I mean, so there's always some kind of trick, though, right?
Yeah, that's different. I mean, that's like even on a stage play where people are, made up to look younger and older and things like that. But we're talking about an industry that wants to replace actors with the profiting celebrities by reusing the same celebrities over and over. You know what I'm saying? To sell their future movies. And I think that's the ability to do it, like I was just giving you some examples, is showing you how it's going to get to the point to where, I mean, the deep fake videos of politicians and celebrities saying things and putting words in their mouth, they're getting harder and harder for people to realize it's that thing. What do you think, Joey?
I mean, I think with what you were saying about de-aging things, even like the story itself, like the one thing that stuck in my head is like the idea of like, these newer actors, but they're always placed like Stranger Things, right? You have like the kid of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke. Like that's one of the main
right.
characters there, right? And then it's based in the 80s, right? So I always thought about this. I think, as been doing filmmaking for a bit, I guess that's one of the ways to make your picture look like it fits your budget is by just de-aging the timeline or the era on which you're filming. So there's
Let's just make it black and white.
Like, I mean, that's one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see more noir films, neo-noir films now, right? Or at least the idea of the single harsh light for newer filmmakers to learn lighting, but that's not a thing anymore, right? But I think the idea of like people buying like, oh, like we're gonna film this whole project on an Ari, but it's going to be based on the 80s, and we're gonna give it a film grain or something like that, because it's like a found footage type of thing, right? It's I think it's a way to just really give them a buffer when it comes to I guess like the believability of what the audience is seeing. I mean, that's one of those smoke and mirrors type of ideas, but I don't know. I guess maybe making a modern film now with stories that are I guess made for today is harder in nature. I think it's easier to see in retrospect like how society was if you make a film or a TV show back in the 80s than it is to like make something now, right?
I mean, like you can literally go back and watch the real films that were made back then.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, like certain jokes or certain topics wouldn't work when you film something
right?
now.
Yeah.
If you were to film something, back in the 90s when, there's some crazy films back then.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think we've done we've gone pretty extensive in this part and again, just going back to the indie filmmaking and like what Ryan was saying about, actors and, making their own films and directing their films and casting themselves, but I think this might be a good time for indie filmmaking, with the people that are, I mean, look, if your bread and butter isn't going to come from the Hollywood films and you're trying to get fame from that, but these, Brad Pitt's going to take your job every time, right? How does that work? How do you stay in the industry? You got to go work at Target or what? I mean, how does that work?
Maybe that's, I mean, it's the.
I guess, do you want fame or do you want to do art or do you want fame or like money, right? So I think if all you're looking for is just to be on the red carpet, like at the Oscars, or if all you're looking for is to be on the cover of Entertainment Weekly, then are you really doing it for the art, or are you just doing it for the fame?
So if you're doing art, right, you can be profitable at art. No one says that you have to die before your art makes money.
I did the masterclass with Werner Herzog, and he talked about how like his first three feature films, he didn't make a single dime off of them, and he still continues to never make money off of them. But it was somebody had seen his like third film, and then offered him a job to direct the fourth one. And that's when he finally started making like money and doing it. But he talks about in his masterclass, he's like, if you have to work that dead end job for the next 10 years to save up the money to make your movie, he's like, then you work that dead end job. Yeah. And you do exactly that. Yeah.
What was the name of that?
Yeah, definitely. Right.
Oh, it's Werner Herzog. He's in The Mandalorian, but I don't know how much because I only saw the first season. But he's very early in. He's the villain in Jack Reacher, but he's also an indie filmmaker at times, and he does documentaries where it's just like him and like two other people. And his whole thing is he's like if you only need, 3 people, if that's all you have, then that's what you have, and you just do it, and you make the movie with 3 people.
He's risked his life for documentary filmmaking before in other countries and stuff. I
think a movie he it was the Volcano movie that won an Oscar. I think it was his that came up a couple years ago.
You're gonna have to be more specific with the Volcano movie.
It's probably called something like Into the Fire. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just giving you a hard time because Dante's Peak or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy world that we're living in because there's so many things. I mean, evolution is like just got a firm grip on every aspect of our society lately. It's just weird and crazy, but there's some good things and some good opportunities happening from change that just has to happen. But there's also the scary part of it, which is, we can't leave the humans out. We connect through art, and we learn from each other through our connections as well. Like what E.T. was saying is like, yes, but in all those video tutorials and things like that, you miss those one-on-one secret conversations like Jason was having with he was basically mentoring you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been thinking since our last and before our last podcast a couple weeks ago, our recording, it's what's happening now with AI is reminding me a little bit of and knowing about the history of computers and film composing and how it was a paradigm shift when sample libraries just started getting better and better, more realistic, and more composers were using them. And then eventually, a little bit more recently, it's not that expensive to get your hands on a laptop or even an iPad or something like a tablet to be able to compose on. So with that, it's great because it democratizes creativity in that sense. But then you have when that happens, you have 1 million film composers all over the world, right? And, and 1 million people wanting to do that as a job, and it's fine. But I think I kind of realized that at some point in terms of computers being so accessible and, even like you guys were mentioning last time, apps that will edit and, drop music in for you and stuff like that, automated. I realized that, well, if I'm going to differentiate myself as an artist, then I need to study the craft of music composing and film composing.
Yes.
And that will help me differentiate myself and set myself apart from the 1 million other kids all over the world trying to do the same thing, So I think having those experiences, those real life, real world experiences, and getting the mentorship from the folks that have done it before you is just priceless. And I think it's part of what can kind of help you stand out from everyone else, including AI, maybe taking over certain tasks or, and so I think that for me, at least in my head, that's applicable. I think, at least right now, in terms of AI and creativity and music and composing. But it's also, then I eventually learned that there's more to it than just the craft. There's also who you are as a person is part of what people are paying you for when they hire you to score their film. They're hiring you for the person you are, for, it sounds kind of corny, but like for your brand, how you present yourself online and in person. So when someone comes to hire you, as opposed to just buying some royalty-free music online or whatever, free, YouTube stuff that you could get for free in your film, like they want to spend the money on someone that knows what they're doing and that has experience. And I kind of feel like, at least the way I'm thinking about it right now, is like that's kind of like the only thing that you have is just your knowledge, your experience, and who you are as a person, your perspective on life. That's kind of
your
what
humanity.
Definitely.
Yeah, all of those things kind of together make you. And so when someone hires you to score a film, they want that, presumably they're paying you to do this job. And so they want everything that you bring to the table as a human and as a creator. And they're willing to spend that money and to budget for you.
Hopefully they'll see the value of that.
Yeah.
They'll recognize it and seek it and hire it and say, we could get an AI, but, we'd rather have Jason or E.T. or Ryan or Joey.
But yeah, I think that's what it is, because I know that personally too, with like doing action. I've met a lot of stuntmen and stunt women, but there are even I would take somebody who's willing to learn and easy to get along with on set than like a really good stunt person that's just a general ass, like on set and to the people. Like, yeah, I would never want to work with someone like that, right?
Yeah, but they learn how to be a good person on set. Like, I learned that by working on the set, even as a PA, where you're not supposed to ever stand still and watch other people do things. You get in there and you help.
Right.
They
learn how to.
A lot of people don't know that.
Well, but that's the thing too, right? Somebody can learn to be like a person that you can work with on set, but, like the personality will still stay the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And if you're definitely on a production, then you're going to see this person like every day for long periods of hours. You really would like somebody you'd be able to like work with, right?
Yes. No, I just had this thought about all the actors that people go, he's a great actor, but man, nobody wants to work with this actor because they're such a pain. It's like, well, we'll just get AI. That'll work.
It reminds me of many years ago, I heard that, or I read somewhere that that's kind of how Willie Nelson picks his bandmates for his bands, is like, if he had to choose between two people, one person was like an amazing musician and the other one was maybe not as good, but really easy to get along with, he'll always pick the person who's easier to get on with.
Makes sense.
I think you get farther that way with your art and your craft as a team,
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're going to call it, so that this episode doesn't get to be too long for our listeners. And we always, if we leave them hanging, right, wanting, what is that saying? If you're left wanting, you'll come back for more? Something like that. I'm really bad with lyrics and sayings like that, but hey, I hope all you listeners enjoyed this, and I'm sure that you understand that you were a part of this conversation, because a lot of the questions that I was asking was with you in mind. And I hope you all have a great one. You guys want to say goodbye to our listeners?
Yeah.
Bye,
Thank you for listening, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
See you next
for
time.
tuning in.